I want to talk about accelerating futures, which is one of the things we've been trying to do at the space portal. And let me just kick off. Let me kick off with our mission statement that we are interested in connecting industry to NASA and to innovation. So helping industry help NASA achieve the goals that we want to achieve for exploration, development, discoveries, and also helping to make space-based solutions available for terrestrial use. And that dual use aspect we have found is really a good business approach, because if you can use space to advance your capabilities, your IP, your discriminators, and you have a business case, a terrestrial business case, that can be a very nice win-win. And we've seen several of those. And one of the things we learned early, it took me probably 10 years of my career, is that make use of tools. And like I imagine many of you, I spent a fair amount of time with the image on your right, the brute force approach, just push the rock up the hill. And when you're young and ambitious, I guess that's a good solution. But as you work through it, you realize, well, if I make use of leverage and other tools and fulcrums, I can accomplish my goal by making use and partnering with effective organizations who have similar Venn diagram overlaps with what I'm interested in doing. And that's really what we focused on at the space portal, was pulling that together. And I'm going to get to a slide that I think Pat may recognize here. Well, first, the companies that we work with. And I'm so pleased to see that now this has become kind of a common chart I've seen in a lot of presentations. And when we first started rolling this out in 2005, people would say what? Okay, who are you working with here? But this was the chart that I think it might have been in my 2005 presentation. This is actually, pulled right out of one of my old presentations about the entrepreneurial space paradigm. And we had the luxury of working with a VC, Alan Marty, back in this time frame. And he was telling us that, well, if you want to do entrepreneurial space, you need more than just space industries, because what we were really focusing on that time was largely space industries, who can provide our launch surfaces, who can provide our capabilities. The customer was NASA, okay, so that was, we knew who the customer was, NASA, we knew who the space industries were. And space investors, what are those? And Alan was the first one who really brought to our attention, if you really want to grow this ecosystem, grow beyond the government, you really need to look at all three vertexes. So what are the industries, what are the customers beyond the government, and very importantly, what are the investors? Who are the people who are willing to risk capital to put the capabilities in place? And that tagline at the bottom, fostering development of space customers and emerging space industries, will attract space investment and lead us to the tipping point for commercial space. And so that was kind of our mantra going all the way back to when ISPCS kicked off. And we've been very pleased with the results, and I'll get into that. One is one of the things we've been involved with the last 3 years called the NASA Frontier Development Lab. And this is a mashup of experts in AI and machine learning with scientists, early career, postdoctorate level, taking on grand challenges. And it has been amazing to watch this. I tell my wife, the more I learn about AI, the more I find it's both impressive and frightening at the same time. And it really is. And we're working with, you can see all the companies that we're working with here, NVIDIA, Google Cloud, IBM, Intel. It's been an amazing collaboration, bringing these capabilities, these new computational capabilities, something called multi-level neural nets. I never knew what those were, and now I do. Along with a whole host of other new AI tools that allow you to take on these challenges. And you see we have them broken out into different categories: space resources, space weather, astrobiology, Earth observation, and exoplanets. And what happens is that these teams have separate questions that they take on, that they apply these new AI tools and machine learning tools to address. And it has been just fascinating. The Earth observation teams actually were hosted by Oxford this year, so this is now gone from Silicon Valley, which is where we started this with SETI, and is now broken into Europe. And the early career participants love this because it gives them a chance to check their capabilities on these really complex problems, have a chance to come and spend some time in Silicon Valley and in Oxford. And the companies love it because they have a chance to look at some top talent from around the world that they can bring in to their areas of interest. So it has been really an exciting opportunity. But going back again to the 2005, 2006, this was when we were birthing COTS. And the COTS concept actually came out of our office. The acronym came from one of my colleagues, Dr. Allison Zuniga. She wanted to have something that sounded like commercial off the shelf, and so she came up with the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services or Systems, which at first we didn't quite like because we thought it was too confusing, that it would confuse people, but it stuck. And it really was a brilliant program. I have to say, it was kind of like a perfect storm. Greg was mentioning this perfect storm of things coming together. And in this time frame, this is the 2005, 2006 time frame, the same thing happened. We had Admiral Steidl was in the agency, and he set up the Non-Traditional Approach Project Office. Jeff Ballinger for the NRO was running that. He contacted me and a number of other people to say, how can we do procurements a different and more effective way? And we came up with the idea of a metric-based approach, which most people thought was nuts. What are you talking about? How does this work? Where the companies provide both the technical milestones and then the compensation that they want, the financial compensation they want for achieving that milestone, and then NASA got to pick the best offerings. And it worked amazingly well. And actually, Administrator Griffin at the time decided that this is a program that needed to be run out of JSC, which I agree, because if anything that came out of the COTS program was going to touch the space station, you better have JSC heavily involved or else it would never happen, and he was right. And Alan Lindemore came in and ran that program beautifully. We helped, but Alan was the one who really, took it across the finish line and did an excellent job. And out of it, we have some really notable capabilities. I have to say, I look back and say, wow, this was worth it. Birthing is always hard. I can say that as watching it happen a couple times. And, but the results can be fantastic. And Orbital ATK, with both their Antares and now their Cygnus. And by the way, the Cygnus can do multiple berthings to the space station. I don't know if that's not very well known. So it can berth, unload payload, deberth, go run some experiments, come back again. And I believe it can do it to 3 or 4 times. Okay, so that's a capability I don't think has been fully exercised yet. And of course, we all know about SpaceX and their Falcon 9 and their ability to do first stage recovery, which I was even very skeptical about that. I'll be honest with you. Like, this is a really hard problem. Retrothrusting at Mach 8, are you kidding me? This can't be done. They did it. Landing on a drone ship out in the Atlantic or out in the Pacific can't be done. Well, they did it. So now we know it can be done. And of course, my personal favorite is the Dragon, because Elon is flying my heat shield. He can be a very wise man at times. Okay, not all the time, but he can be a very wise man. And then this was our bonus. The Falcon Heavy, he did this on his own dime. This was, okay, by the way, in addition to having logistics support to the ISS, here, I'll give you a bonus, I'll give you a Falcon Heavy, which was just phenomenal to watch both that lift off and recover those 2 stages. They did splash the center core, but we'll cut them a little bit of slack on that. And Greg Autry showed this slide, but I think it's really worth noting the recapture of the commercial satellite launch market, which we had completely lost. By the way, we had about a 90% market share in the 90s on this, and we lost it in the 2000s. It just eroded away to nothing, as you can see, by the time we were into like 2010, 2011, 2012. It had completely evaporated. Now Elon in 2017 was up to almost 50%, and it looks like in 2018 he's going to go to a majority share. And in my book, Pat, this is a tipping point. And in fact, I think it's a very important tipping point when we can recapture market share from other competitors. And there was another really nice program that was rolled out by STMD, and I thank Tim Chen for the call out on the cruiser program. Yeah, that was another one of the Space Portal's products, another one of the things that we birthed. This is another one that we had a hand in. I was on the source evaluation board for Tipping Point. And this isn't a huge amount of money by NASA standards, but I think it's quite important money. And again, this really motivates and promotes companies coming in and with some of their own funds to really get a nice alignment of business goals, that when they get a product that they're willing to put some money behind, then NASA also gets a product that it needs. And as you can see, that we made awards to 6 companies, and those companies included Blue Origin, Space Systems Loral, Astrobotics, and Blue Origin. And some very, I think, very important technologies will be coming out of this, and we look forward to, again, additional tipping points occurring over the next few years. But I want to talk a little bit here now about a new moon race. And I've been watching this and have been fascinated, particularly by some of the outcomes of the IAC in Bremen this year. And again, Space Directive 1, and a lot of people have talked about this, but I think this was really important for the administration to come out and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Federal bureaucracies work much better when they know what the boss wants, and so this is what the boss wants, so okay, this is what we want to do. And then we also have Jim Bridenstine. And Jim has done a great job, I think, at articulating what he sees are important things that need to be done in his tenure and following what the administration wants to do, which you can read there. And this has come from a variety of different sources of the permanent base on the lunar surface. One of the ones that I really like is about the potential resources on the moon, and that if there are valuable resources on the moon and we don't get there first, we may be ceding that to some people that we don't really agree with their political and world outlooks. And so this provides some level of, I would say, urgency. We can't just dawdle here because the world is moving on and we would prefer to be leading. And as one of my colleagues says, if you want to lead, it's better to be in front. Okay. And one of the things that we actually published, this is in 2013, so we're a little bit ahead of our time, was looking at the successful lessons learned from the COTS program and how do we apply that to a lunar program, okay, the lessons learned. And COTS had some really important lessons learned on how do you put in place really effective partnerships that serve the government's interest and motivate industry to risk some of their own resources to achieve. And we think and have thought that the moon provides a really nice opportunity for exercising the COTS model. And there's some other activity happening here. In addition to, Steve Clark mentioned the Commercial Lunar Services Program, which I think is a great start. I mean, they're small payloads, but it's a start. But some other people are jumping in to this game. This is Lockheed Martin. They rolled out their crewed lunar lander concept. This is a big vehicle. For everything I can see, this is kind of a rework of the Altair lander that was part of the Constellation program. And but they clearly have something that they would like to contribute here, which, as you can see from the picture, it's clearly crew scale. But then there's this other company, and we've been watching Blue, and this has been one of the most surprising things to me. Jeff really typically holds his cards very close to his chest. And so you don't quite know what he's up to until he's accomplished it. And we've heard a little bit about New Shepard. Yes, this is flying hardware. He's going to be flying crew this next year. It's gone slower than a lot of us thought. I mean, he actually put Blue Shepard, founded at the same time that SpaceX was founded by Elon. But he's gone much more low-key than Elon has, but he's doing his tortoise step-by-step ferociously approach, and so he's moving forward. And the next thing he's really working on here is New Glenn. And I joke with some people that Jeff seems to want to be the first to be second, which is a very smart business move. Let Elon wring out all the technical risk, and then Jeff can come in with a better option that, at a fraction of the cost that Elon spent, taking care of the tough problems. And his New Glenn is, by all the looks of it, a gorgeous rocket, about twice the payload capability of the current Falcon 9, which, keep in mind, is double the payload capability of the original Falcon 9. I mean, it's amazing to watch how these things have evolved. Again, the drone ship, and he's got this huge facility, 750,000 square feet, that he's putting in place down in Florida, along with his BE-4 rocket factory in Huntsville, Alabama. So, I mean, he's putting serious assets into this. And then in Germany, he made a nice public showing of his Blue Moon, and that he intends to essentially use the expertise and capabilities that he's developed with his New Shepard, with his LOX hydrogen, essentially upper stage that he put in place for New Shepard, and convert it to a reusable lunar lander that has multi-metric ton capabilities, up to about 4 metric tons as we understand it, particularly flying off of New Glenn. And then he signed some deals with some German companies, which I found this a little bit surprising, for putting supplies on the moon by 2023. So I want to ask him, what about American companies, Jeff? How do we get on board that? And then they also rolled out this moon race, again with Airbus, okay, where he's now soliciting a broader, proposals for payloads that he can fly to the moon. So everything would seem that he is really serious about getting payloads going on the moon. Then there's this other guy, SpaceX, and Elon Musk, and you've heard about the BFR, and he does have pretty pictures. You got to admit that. But he also has signed up some serious money for this. I'll just call the gentleman MZ. He's the Japanese designer who literally bought a whole BFS, Big Falcon spaceship, for a lunar flyby orbit, and they believe they can take 12 people on this. And the financial terms have not been disclosed, but this has to be, I would guess, over $100 million for this, maybe even more. But a significant chunk of money, and Elon even said, well, this is providing really important capital for him to pursue the development of the BFR. And the same way, he's putting real money behind this. He has his facility, his tent, his large tent in Long Beach Harbor. He is, as you can see, one of his tools there with the car beside it. It's one of the composite formation tools. About a year ago, he did an example LOX tank, and he's got his Raptor engine, which is we don't have all the technical details, but appears to be a very nice, again, LOX methane engine development. So Elon is, again, putting serious resources behind this. We'll see, if he hits the finish line, but he is certainly intending to hit the finish line. And then, of course, he has his Moonbase Alpha. He claims with his approach, where he essentially does he puts the BFS into an elliptical orbit and then refuels the BFS, and he says he can take the whole thing all the way to the moon, 100 metric ton payload capability, and bring it all the way back to Earth. And I mean, this is like something out of Tintin, okay? It's like a science fiction movie. But again, he is clearly very serious about this, and boy, would that change things if he actually accomplishes this. I mean, the world would look entirely different if he actually succeeds at this. That's far from guaranteed, but it's also far from guaranteed that he'll fail. Okay, you can't, I wouldn't want to take that bet, I'll tell you. So, this new moon race, who's going to win this time? I mean, it's a little bit different players. Okay, we have the Chinese are engaged. We have the Russians are engaged. NASA with our gateway and other things that we want to do. And my other question, is this the next tipping point? Is this going to generate enough public interest and government interest that this really accelerates additional development of capabilities and economies in space. And I think that's one of the important questions. And I would love to be here 10 years from now, Pat, to see, that's about how long it took before, 13. Okay, so it took 13 years from now to see what is the outcome. And so with that, thank you very much. And I don't want to stand between you and your reception much longer. So
we've got questions. You can't run out yet, Dan. You can't run out yet. So first of all, I was reminded that our sponsor here, BPRH, is the facility builder for all those great big blue buildings out there in Florida. So
I didn't know that.
We want to give them a plug for that. Do you agree with Greg Autry that NASA should continue with the SLS, Orion, and the Gateway and stimulate commercial lunar landers simultaneously?
Yes. I am a true believer in parallel paths. When you want to do something that's important, don't pick one path, have parallel paths. And I think there's a lot of reasons why we have pursued SLS to this point, okay? And again, there's a whole history there, but there's very serious reasons. But at the same time, I would say right now we have some serious options. And so I'm a big favor of a horse race, okay? Let's see how this horse race goes and see what is going to, create the most value back to the country. How do we get, and again, the worst case scenario, which actually Greg got into, is that if someone else wins this race and they don't speak English. I really don't like that outcome, so I would love to have a couple of U.S. horses in this race.
Very good. You ask, or you talk a lot about who's going to win the new moon race. How would you define win in this race?
I think that's a good question as well. I would say it has to do with who is really going to be in a position to provide significant payloads to the lunar surface and lunar vicinity. Okay, so again, 13 years from now, when we're looking back, just like we do now with COT, so we can look back and see, wow, it was SpaceX and it was orbital ATK. And who here remembers rocket plane Kistler? I do, yeah. So they fell out of the race, and again, no one could have predicted that in 2005, but now we know the outcome. Similarly, who is going to be the dominant transportation provider to the lunar vicinity and the lunar surface 13 years hence?
Wow. So there's a lot of discussion. I was at the NASA Advisory Council. There's a lot of discussion about how the Gateway fits into various programs. How do you see the Gateway fitting into the commercial future in cislunar space?
That's also a good question, and I guess from where I sit with Gateway, I see there are really 4 key questions that need further examination. And I'd say those 4 questions are what, when, where, and how much. Okay, so what are its primary functions? Okay, what do you want to do with Gateway? Okay, when do you want to do this relative to other things that you're doing? Okay, where do you put it? Okay, and again, I think one of the nice features about Gateway with the solar electric propulsion is that you have the option, even if you start out in one location, you can move it. Then also how much? What's the price tag? And from where I sit, I don't know if we've had really enough exploration to really have those questions well answered so that we have a nice, clear picture of where this does fit. And at the same time, these other developments are going to obviously impact it. And so we can only project so far ahead. I think there can be a lot of valuable things we can do with Gateway. I really do. But I think it really needs some additional exploration.
So the first I, or the I in ISPCS, is for international. We're hearing a lot about U.S.-led, U.S.-only. How do we square that? How do we square these two things?
Well, I like the idea of pretty much how we did Space Station. And what I mean by that it's a U.S.-led activity with international partners. And I should mention, I forgot to mention, with the NASA Frontier Development Lab, one of our sponsors is Luxembourg, okay, which is fine, okay, but it's U.S.-led with international participation. And I find that those scenarios work better. I think when we've had evidence of activities out of the UN, for example, where things can get messy when it's, I'll call it purely a international activity. I think if the U.S. can be in a leadership position, I think historically we found that typically that goes better, at least from where we sit. And I think we are in a position, if we so choose, to continue to lead, but with international participation, obviously.
Okay, a little bit different question. General Pete Worden was Ames Center Director. How would you say he helped pave the way in this area?
Oh, Pete was quite something, okay, both, both in what he did and how he did it. He was clearly an innovator. There's no doubt about it. He was also very disruptive, okay, and there's no doubt about that. But I think he brought some very good ideas to the table. He was a big advocate of commercial space. He was a big advocate of really looking outside the box and really pushing the envelope. Now, I think towards the end of his tenure, his relationship with headquarters had become, difficult enough that it was kind of time for him to move on. And he's having a great time with the Breakthrough Prize. I mean, he's really, I think, found his element. But no, I think he made some very important contributions.
If you had to revise your list of space customers from your 2005 slide, who would you add in 2018?
The customers.
Well, you had the slide that had all.
Okay. Have the people that we're working with.
Right. Customer may not be the
actually,
right
one of the ones I would add with the Frontier Development Lab, we have Google Cloud, we have IBM, we have Intel. In fact, one of the things that we really like about the Frontier Development Lab, it isn't always easy to get Silicon Valley companies to partner with you. They're busy and they have a lot of money and they have other things that they want to do. And we've been able then to hook them in to this Frontier Development Lab, space related, and we're seeing more and more, I'll call it traditional companies that don't have any type of a space activity or even a space view, suddenly seeing space as a potential innovation area for them to advance their products. And so I think those would be the ones that I would add that were on that Frontier Development Lab slide.
Some people say that, and appropriately so, NASA transferred a lot of technology to SpaceX, Pika, for COTS. And the well of technology, it's not so deep for the lunar technology. Will NASA pay for developing some of the lunar technology?
I think it would be in NASA's interest to do so. I think that one of the real benefits that the government provides, and again, you'll find this if you talk to these companies, is providing a technology foundation for them to come in and use to push point designs. And I think NASA would be well advised to continue with that because it's in a very important role that we provide to maintain the competitiveness of our space industry, okay? So if we want our space industry to be competitive, if we can provide this foundation of capabilities, then our industries win.
Excellent. And someone has pointed out you forgot Paragon as a tipping point winner, so we'll just make that note and move on. I wanted to...
oh, that's right, yeah. Sorry, that was, I didn't get to all 6 companies. That's right, Paragon was another one. Yes.
I wanted to just give you a personal perspective here as we get off stage here. In 2005, I was the shuttle program manager, and Mike Seffardini was the station program manager, and every Monday afternoon, the Johnson Space Center Center Director had their staff meeting, direct reports, and the program managers, and we let it off. What were the programs doing? How were we returning to flight? How was Space Station surviving? Who was doing what to who? And all of a sudden, this new guy showed up, Alan Lindenmoyer. And he was a program manager for some program we'd never heard of. And when he spoke, it was like he was talking in Greek. It was, something we didn't understand. And I just got to tell you that sometimes, if you're so immersed in the traditional programs, you can't recognize the revolution that's going on right in front of your nose. And boy, that has really been a successful program. And I thank you for your part in that. And I thank you for your discussion today. And we will let you walk off the stage. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.